So great to have you join us, Greg. I think that we have probably a couple of hundred investors on this call right now. And because they are early stage tech investors, without question, they already know who Greg Kidd is. But having said that, I'm going to say a couple of words. You know, Greg grew up in the US. He studied operations research, organizational behavior, and game theory at Yale, and then became a consultant at Booz Allen Hamilton, where I was once a partner too. He worked with them in North America and Australia, and then founded Dispatch Management Services. And that's where Alice and I first met Greg. We were very fortunate to be angel investors in Dispatch Management, got to know Greg, got to know Linda Jenkinson, who had worked with us before. And many of you will remember Linda because she then founded Le Concierge, which Kretsu backed and which got to a positive exit. Greg, after Dispatch Management, which was essentially a company using messaging technology to transform the global courier industry, Greg then spun out, joined the Federal Reserve and then Promontory, which is a leading regulatory consulting firm globally. But in parallel, he became a very active angel investor. And he was, I guess, able to see the brilliance of Jack Dorsey. And with Jack Dorsey, he co-founded Twitter and then Square. And then he went on to be first investor in Coinbase, one of the early founders and investors in Ripple, as well as an early investor in Robinhood and a host of others, including Linqto and Uphold and so on. So I think it's fair to say, and he's a very modest guy, but Greg is one of the world's leading early stage angel investors and company formers. And we're going to spend the next 25 minutes getting some of Greg's wisdom. Now, I will also say that Greg asked me to tell you that he doesn't like giving investment advice. He doesn't like proposing that other people invest in the things he does. He knows how high risk this is. So if in the next 20 minutes we talk about a few companies, don't blame it on Greg if they end up not succeeding. We are in a world of high risk investing, as I think you all know. So Greg, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Matthew, for having me.
Yes, so let me open this up by, I've asked you this question before, and I know you have a way of answering it, but because everyone on this line are very sophisticated angel investors, what's your investment strategy? How do you end up being in so many unicorns and emerging unicorns?
Well, so first, I'm not a technologist. I mean, I am a person who's investing often in what we might call reg tech or even legal tech. So we're looking for situations, and I've always been looking for situations where there's a fundamental political and social change. And by that, I mean investments in companies and organizations that are going to change access, rights, and privileges. And so, oddly enough, I think of Bitcoin, for instance, as a change in access. It means you can hold digital money without having to ask anyone permission. Twitter was a revolution of access of who could publish. Square was a revolution of access for who could take a payment. And Ripple has been a whole new way of transferring funds in different currencies all around the world. And so each of these have been revolutions in access. And so for me, it's hanging around people that are, there's technology, but what they're really changing is the balance of power in key industries and marketplaces. And so if you just hang around those crowds, eventually you'll bump into a few unicorns. I mean, Matthew doesn't like it saying that it helps to just be lucky, like a Forrest Gump type thing. But I think the theme of Forrest Gump was he was around when all these big things happened. And so, for instance, for like Ripple, it was going to the right poker game with all the payments professionals talking about, hey, yeah, there's Bitcoin, but this is the first company that's actually building a new blockchain where there's a company behind it and it is multi-currency as opposed to single currency. And I was like, well, I don't know that much about that, but that's the kind of thing where you want to like go and see Chris Larson, and it doesn't matter whether you're going to be sweeping the floor. I convinced them that they needed someone to look after compliance and risk. so that's how I got in. So I'm not really the founder of any of these. I just kind of get in and hang around early and basically learn as I go. And so I'm not a co-founder of Twitter. Jack was living with me. I made sure there was milk in the fridge, and I did put money in, and I did work there some, but it's more about attaching yourself to people that they're out to, like, I often say they're out to do good, but they end up doing well. And that's been the key for me. I learn about technology as I go, but my premise is that the biggest revolution in each of the companies, and it's the same with like an Uber or an Airbnb, is they're revolutionizing access. Oftentimes they're flattening the levels of vertical complexity in industries. And yes, there is a technology involved, but neither what happened at Uber was not that technologically innovative. It was the way that they innovated in the marketplace. And those are the opportunities I'm just looking to go to lunch with the people that are doing those things.
Yes. So Greg, so if that theme of people changing access for the world around substantial and important needs and uses is sort of your investment, target, how do you hang out with the right people? I mean, we're all angel investors. We all hang out with each other. Who I know, and I'm not going to name where it is, but I know that you have a place and you invite people to come to that place. But how do you find the right places?
Don't call it a commune. Don't call it a commune.
Yeah, but how do you find the right places to hang out?
So look, it used to be easy. You just had to hang out on Market Street in San Francisco, and if you threw a stone, you'd probably hit a unicorn. And so to some extent, there was a time when you could do that by just being around in San Francisco and just keeping up with what the buzz was and going to that. The world's not like that now. So part of the reason I'm working with folks like you, Matthew, and whatnot is the opportunities are now coming, and you have to get on that plane and go around the world and find like where the next Skype is going to come from. So you have to go to like Estonia, or like you need to be around and see how WeChat works. And so in the last 5 years, I think there's been a huge shift. And so you can't just be lazy and hang around the Bay Area and expect to bump into things. And so you have to pick your poisons. And so, I mean, back in around 2012, I was the blockchain for me. And now, like the last couple of years, it's been identity. And this COVID thing has been a huge education, because like once again, just standing around without identity and the ability for you to prove your identity, and that you've either had a vaccination, that you've had a negative test, or you have the antibodies, I don't know how we're going to get back to anything that looks remotely like normal. And so identity is one of those things that's been like waiting to break out. Now, here we are. If you want to avoid Zoom bombing or prove before you get on the airplane that you don't have the virus, without strong authentication of identity and then the ability to attach proofs to that identity, I don't see how we're going to get anywhere back to anything that resembles normal. And so,
yes. So let's just double click on that. I know that you're the co-founder, or you are the founder of Global ID. I know Linqto is working very closely with you on that,
right?
And that you've been kind enough to be the lead investor in Linqto. But just because we only have 15 minutes left, just what's the from to of global identity? What is it today, and what do you think it's going to be?
So up till now, identity has been what a company or a country have said it is. So identity has been defined in national terms. It's been defined in country terms. Like there's a Facebook identity, there's a WeChat identity. Like what it is going to be in the future, in the Star Trek future, where everybody can buy dilithium crystals, doesn't matter whether you're Cleons or Romulans. They've obviously figured out a form of money and a form of identity that's not only global, it's intergalactic. So they have a form of identity that doesn't live within the silo. The way we've been up till now has been a lot like what the internet was when it was the days of AOL, Prodigy, CompuServe. each of those dominant companies wanted you to be in their silo, and they thought their silo was going to crush everybody else's silo. And when the World Wide Web came along with a protocol, in this case, the protocol was for the domain name system, which if you think about it is an identity system for the web. It's not a technological innovation. It's a linguistic innovation. It's giving every website in the world, not every website at a particular company, not every website in a particular country, giving it a name so no two sites have the same name. We're at that point now with identity.
I should watch him. He's at least now wearing his bike gear.
Someone else just interfered. Greg, please keep going.
So today, the big opportunity for the far future is to come up with an identity solution that is portable across those silos. And so while AOL didn't think that the World Wide Web was going to like trumpet, WeChat, Telegram, WhatsApp, they probably think, hey, we're the solution. We're the identity solution, the messaging platform. The question is, none of them are interoperable. And so for us to come up with a solution, if you're going to prove those credentials, you're going to have a form of identity that cuts across those silos, not just the company silos, but the country silos too. If China makes a digital currency that is like a crypto digital currency, who's going to be able to hold it? Chinese people, non-Chinese people? Well, how are you going to know without an identity system? And it can't be one that just lives within their silo. It's got to work across the silo. So that is what the far future is. But we need to bring the far future close in, because COVID doesn't know about company boundaries. COVID doesn't know about national boundaries. You're going to need to have a credential, prove your identity, and prove a state of your health on a global basis in a way, hopefully, that's privacy preserving and secure. That's the challenge. That's the opportunity.
Thank you. And I know that a number of people who are listening to this will probably want to learn more, and globalid.com is a place they can go, and there's some white papers.
It's just global.id. We got rid of the .com.
That's right, global.id.
That's too complicated, Matthew. That's the other thing. Everything's got to be simple.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for that. And I was with the British government at an event before Christmas, and they're pounding the drum on this topic too. The reality is all of us, are being scammed and hacked and phished and SIM card hijacked, and identity is today breaking in very substantial ways. And that's before we get to the questions such as which of us have had this horrible virus and which of us hasn't, and so on and so on. So we got time for two more questions, Greg. And the first one I want to ask you is actually going to be about other companies that you're very passionate about and interested in. And I have already given the preface that you'd never like to recommend anyone invest in something else. But on the other hand, you're a very active investor and you are investing in things. So I've watched you over the last couple of years, and you are in Uphold, and you are in TransferGo and Yo-Yo Wallet and Linqto and Ripple and Brave and others. Where are you placing your angel dollars right now, and what are some of the companies that you're excited by?
So I have placed a big bet on Uphold, and you can think about Uphold as like a Coinbase, but with APIs so that other people can build on it. Instead of them building their own ledger, them building their own wallet, they can rely on Uphold. And so my big premise today is don't build your own messaging system, don't build your own ledger, don't build your own wallet, don't build your own identity stack. Build whatever you're building for your particular vertical, your particular geographical segment. Get those users, and just like what Stripe and Twilio did 10 years ago, now there's equivalents of that for wallets, ledgers, identity, and cards. And so each of the companies that I'm investing in does some piece of that. Uphold does the wallet. There's a company called Apto. Apto is who did the card for Coinbase. They did the original Venmo card. Marquette is doing the card for Square. So these are the folks that are the Stripes and the Twilios of tomorrow. I do like Brave also, because Brave has a model for privacy preserving browsers. It's an alternative to kind of cookie and advertising based world we've lived in with Google and Facebook. That world has been very privacy shredding, or has also been just downright creepy. And I believe that there be future solutions, both for regulatory but also ethical reasons, are going to have a different business model than the old ad model and basically selling your identity to the highest bidder. And so I'm investing in companies that are plotting an alternative to what is the current Google and Facebook paradigm for an ad-based sell your identity to the highest bidder world.
Yes. So I'm just going to, that was good. Thank you. And then because Linqto and Ripple are presenting today,
right?
And I know you're not recommending anyone ever invest in anything, but why are you a Ripple why were you so interested in Ripple, and why have you invested in Linqto?
Well, Ripple actually came before Ether. People kind of think about it the other way because Ether has a bigger market cap than Ripple right now. But Ripple was just like, it was like Bitcoin, and you added another column for like different currencies. And I was like, hell, I want one of those. And so that was the way for me to learn about the blockchain, because there was no like Bitcoin company to go to work for at that time. So that was the first company that tried to actually commercialize. And what I was fascinated with Ripple is it might take this exotic technology and bring it to the mainstream. That's what's been exciting for me. Linqto is an access revolution, right? So this whole world of trying to sell private company stock, it was a pain in the ass for me selling my Twitter and Square shares. If something like Linqto had been around, the whole world of giving liquidity to private company markets like we take for granted for public company markets, that to me is like a huge reduction in friction. It's a huge increase in access, because you can get involved in companies for a much smaller amount, and you learn by investing. I pay a lot more attention when you have, even if it's just 10,000 shares of Robinhood, you kind of pay attention. And if you can do with Linqto what you can do with Robinhood, then that is a whole nother method of access. And it's great for the companies that are raising capital. It's great for those of us that are treating angel investing not just as a way of like making money, but of like educating ourselves. And it makes it easy and it makes it fun. And so I'm really excited that and potentially, you know, if we can bring that Linqto capability to like the rest of the world that has, I mean, how many accredited investors are there in the world? The fact that we could do that on a global basis, that's a huge access revolution as well.
Great. So Greg, we got, I think, 5 minutes left, and I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about anything you want to say to this audience in the last 5 minutes. We won't do any Q&A. So is there anything else you just want to talk about in the last 5 minutes?
So I want to say that I got swept off my feet. Every so often I get swept off by my feet. I got swept off my feet. There's a chap named Ayo, A-Y-O. I've never met him. He worked at Square. He was the lead for Square Cash. He's written a paper. Well, it's a couple of pages on the internet. And he's put forth a challenge question. He said, look, we all know that Stripe can set up so that companies like e-commerce companies can take payments in minutes rather than days, months. He's asked, what would it take so that you could issue cards to any startup, not in 3 months, not in 3 weeks, in 3 minutes? How could startups get out there, form groups of users, and issue them cards? Now, that's what I call a forcing function. You might say, well, yeah, just cards. Well, you know, if you're going to do cards, you need accounts. And if you're going to need accounts, you need identity. And so by posing that question of what would it be like if we did the same thing for issuing cards, which are just generally payment instruments, so that any group, it could be a merchant setting up a loyalty program, it could be the bike club, it could be a union giving cards to all its members, 1,000 flowers blooming. He's asked that question. I've taken on that challenge. I want to make it such that any developer, with or without a technological background, ought to be able to set up groups of users in a compliant way that's already pre-approved by MasterCard and issuing banks, so they don't have to do further approvals, because that's all bundled up in the API, the card, the account, the identity, and all the compliance and risk controls, so that the developer, the technology, doesn't have to worry about that. That will result in a new wave of innovation. And to do that on a global basis, not just the US basis, that's the kind of people that I'm looking for. Now, I haven't gone to lunch with this guy, Ayo, yet, but he's who I want to go to lunch with. And I'm already like working as if he's my new boss. So it's finding those people. And somebody, you know, just sent me that link. I read that paper and he like knocked me out, just like Satoshi did 10 years earlier. So I encourage you to find your Ayos, and I can get that link and we can send it around, and you can see whether that will transfix you. any of you in the audience the way it did for me. And if it does, those are companies that can contribute to that vision. I'm going to double down on investing in them.
Cool. Well, so I think that's really interesting. It's the first time I've heard it. I'm definitely up for helping out with whatever this IO initiative is. As you know, I used to do a lot of payments and credit card work too.
Oh, yeah.
But Greg, this was fantastic. It was short. I hope it was valuable to the audience. Thank you so much for explaining why Linqto is a bigger idea than we may have appreciated. And with that, I'm going to ask that we hand back to Bill.